Okay. My pajama pants on. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be going over all of the books that I've read in 2024, kind of chatting you through them. I love making book related content, but I feel like I haven't done that in a while. I feel like the last time we talked about books was like end of summer, I want to say, and I have been reading since then. I just haven't been doing a lot of like intentional reading. It's just been more like sporadic and like when I get the time or like when it's convenient. And I've also been actually listening to a lot more audiobooks this year too, because after I graduated, my Spotify plan like updated to the regular level, so now I have like access to audiobooks. It's been fun, but I'll kind of like touch on that a little bit. Sorry if you can hear like me sniffling a lot. I feel like I have like some really intense allergies going on, but please excuse that. This year has been like quite crazy for me, so I'm just glad I met my reading goal on Goodreads. Speaking of which, I have my Goodreads pulled up so I can see. I set my reading goal for 20 books in 2024, which was basically the same as last year. I did 10 books last year on Goodreads for my reading goal because I only started my reading goal like halfway through the year, so I read like around 20 total that year. But this year I like set it to 20 and I actually read 23, and then on top of that I have like a couple of like DNFs or like things I haven't finished yet, so I'll talk about those too because I feel like they're part of the whole year, but we'll get to that. Okay, starting off actually is the third book in a series, A Curse for True Love. First of all, the cover, like stunning. I purposefully ordered these from, I believe, Waterstones in the UK and like shipped them over here because I do not like the US covers at all. I don't think they do the series justice, and the UK covers are just stunning and gorgeous. I mean, this could like literally fit on my wall and be part of my aesthetic. I do have the rest of the series back there, but I think I was like finishing this one up in the new year or something. I really enjoyed the series. I feel like my like resurgence into reading, because like I read when I was like younger and that was like predominantly like dystopian. When I got back into it, I feel like it's like the typical like dystopian novels as a middle schooler to reading fantasy as a young adult. Fantasy is like definitely my preferred genre, the one that I usually go for, which we'll see some developments through as I keep going on with my books. So this series has more of like a folklore fairy tale vibe to it. There's references to like different fairy tales. The way I can describe it is like the magic feels like lighter and more like fantastical. The themes aren't like super heavy and dark, which is what I would describe like Sarah J. Maas books, Rebecca Yarros books, like those types of books. I feel like if you read fantasy, you kind of know what I'm talking about, but I really enjoyed this. This was like a very light read, and I've reread this series like also as well this year. I haven't read Carvel yet. I feel like I should, but I think I was just like really excited to read like this series, so I just like kind of read that on its own, but I feel like eventually it might be interesting to read Carvel. This is like a spin-off series to that. Quickly skipping out of the fantasy genre, I have Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This was a really good book for me to read at the time. It explained a lot of my feelings that I've had towards my like female friendships, but like really wrote it in a beautiful way, and like it was nice to see someone else talk about it in their own life and kind of put words to it. And I think it was like really beautifully written, and like I do want to read more of her books, but I just haven't gotten around to it. I know this is like one of her bigger ones, but if you're like in your young adult years, late teens, I don't know how far you would go, but I feel like this is a really good book to read. And I don't know, it's always just nice to see how people have lived their 20s while you're in your 20s, and it brings like a sense of calm and like takes away some of the fear about like not knowing what's coming in the future, because a lot of us do have like a lot of shared experiences. But really recommend this. I think it was a really nice, good, fun read. Next we have a behemoth of a book. This is massive. This is Sarah J. Maas's House of Flame and Shadow. It is the third book in the Crescent City series. I think it's gonna be multiple books. I feel like this is gonna anger some people, but reading Sarah J. Maas, it's lost a lot of the magic that I had felt to it when I first started reading her books, which is sad. I know there's stuff about the author being controversial, and like it kind of sucks that it's like the ACOTAR community was like a huge thing, and it still is till this day, but just having it like soured like kind of sucks. But in terms of the content of this book, I actually really enjoyed it. I personally like a lot of the characters in this book, and it is one of those like multi-POV situations, which I really don't like multi-point of views, but I think every character in this book, I think every character that was in this book I really enjoyed reading. I honestly don't really remember who was in this book, except Bryce's storyline kind of felt a little long and was kind of annoying. Like, if you know anything about the series, you know what happened at the end of the second book. That whole thing, I was expecting a lot more out of it, and it was just not as entertaining or enjoyable, so I wasn't like big on that. But I feel like all the other characters were interesting, and I also like the world of this. Definitely not like the same as like the other series of hers. I definitely like those worlds a lot better, but I think it is like something different that I haven't really seen before. So okay, next up we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I'm actually also gonna say that I did read Reckless. I listened to it. I know a lot of people love the series, and this might anger some people. Not about Powerless. Powerless was all right for me. What did I rate it? A 3. When I say 3, I liked it. I just didn't love it. I found a lot of things like kind of cringy to me. That's so mean. I wasn't feeling a lot between the two main characters. One, I feel like a lot of the storyline was like very similar to things I've already read before, and in the fantasy genre, I don't really like that, because I think the point of fantasy is like it's supposed to be like so imaginative and creative, and when I see something that is just so similar to something I've already read, or just like a combination of things that already exist, I'm not really like as drawn into it, but that's just like my own personal taste. This one was better than Reckless though. Reckless, I did not like. What did I give it? I gave it a 2. I did not like Reckless. It was a bit harder for me to get into and kind of read, and I am wondering, like, does anyone have thoughts about audiobooks? Because sometimes I do feel like audiobooks, they're great because they're the only way that I can like get to read a book sometimes, because I listen to it while I'm walking. Sometimes I feel like I tap out a little bit too often, that I'm like, am I missing things, or is this like ruining the experience for me? But genuinely for that book, I think I would have stopped reading it. I mean, even with this book, like I started reading it and then put it down and read a bunch of other things, and then ended up reading the rest like after I like kind of told myself like, okay, like pick this book up again. Now we're getting into my summer reads, which I have videos about on my channel. Emily Henry books, including Funny Story. I actually did end up reading Funny Story later on in the year. I didn't like record it or anything. It wasn't part of like this video because I was like, I'm not gonna read it until it's out in paperback. But then I just ended up listening to the audiobook on Spotify. So I really loved Funny Story. Funny Story was really good. I have my rankings on my channel already. If you want to watch that video, I will link it. Least favorite, second, and then first, and then Funny Story on top of it. Honestly, like I really liked Funny Story. It was kind of the first time I was like really getting into the contemporary romance genre. I just wanted something super summery, and I feel like these did it. Like this really hit what I wanted out of them, and I am so excited that there's a bunch of adaptations in the works, and I will eat those up when they come out. Love these books, really recommend them. These could be like something that I pull out every summer and like kind of just reread and kind of get back into that same summery feeling, especially since this past summer was like really fun and I loved it. The environment or the headspace that I'm in while I'm reading a book really impacts the way I enjoy it. I feel like these books will always hold a bit of this past summer in them, and I really like think that will stay with me for a while. So love these books. I will be reading like every Emily Henry book that comes out, and also I want to read, I think it's like there's another one, Book Lovers. Next up, we are followed by Abby Jimenez. Again, another great writer in the contemporary romance genre. Again, another video on this. I will link it up here. I loved this book. This was my favorite out of all of these. I think this is my stack of favorites. It might be the opposite way with these two, but I thought her characters were really enjoyable, and I like that they are kind of in the same world. Like they're all kind of connected, so that is really interesting to like see the cross of like the different characters. There's a little bit of like a more magical touch to her books, like a magical element, not in like the writing or anything, like I'm saying like literal magic. So I enjoy these and I recommend them. I'm not sure if these are like reread types for me. I feel like I would reread this one, but yeah, really liked them. According to my list, the next thing I read was This Is How You Heal by Brianna Wiest. I listened to this one. We're kind of getting into my Spotify audiobooks now, really, because this is when I started having the plan that allowed me to do that. I really loved The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. That book changed my life, honestly changed the trajectory of my life. And also I read it right before I went to study abroad and kind of like finished it as I started studying abroad. So it really helped me understand anxiety and how to cope with it, and how to like, I don't know, just how to see the world and how to approach the world and how to like work on yourself without being against yourself. And I recommend that book to every single person. I read this one. I don't really remember a lot of it. I think there were points where I was like, yes, like that really hit, but also I listened to The Mountain Is You and I like retained everything. This one I also listened to and I didn't really retain as much, but I feel like maybe reading it physically might be a different experience, so I might do that. I don't know. Okay, next I have my Taylor Jenkins read books that I went through. I did 3 of them. There is actually a vlog that I fully filmed about reading Taylor Jenkins read. I never edited it together for some reason. I think it was because I only had the talking bits and I didn't know what to pair with it. I don't know, I just thought that I needed that. But if you guys would want to see that, please let me know, because I do have it sitting on my computer and I will like put that together. I just like, I don't know like if people would want to see it at this point is the only thing. So if you want to see it, let me know. Otherwise I'll just kind of like let it be. But I really liked reading those books. I also read Daisy Jones and the Six while watching the show, and that was like a really cool experience. I loved doing that. The thing I will say about Taylor Jenkins Reid books is like I feel like they're made to become scripts and like shows and movies, and I hope honestly that the other 2 books become a part of like the film or TV industry, because they're just so good. I feel like they could be done really well. It has that like celebrity aspect, that like famous characters who they are very flawed, and it's like interesting to read about characters like that. Next, I read Yellowface. I don't have it with me because I actually borrowed it from a coworker. This was such an interesting book to read and so different than what I usually read. I don't know, I really want to like challenge myself in the new year to like read more books that I'm like not usually reading and like branch out more, because I actually really liked this book. It was so interesting to see like an evil in a very human way character. You see how crazy the main character is and like just all the wrong things she thinks and does, the way she tries to like justify her actions or like not take accountability, and it's like this stuff probably happens like everywhere and we don't even know. I recommend it. I know R.F. Kuang is like a huge author. Kind of like going back on the Taylor Jenkins Reid characters and this character in Yellowface, it's like it's always so interesting to me to read from flawed character perspectives, or like characters that you're not really supposed to like root for or like see yourselves in, because I feel like a lot of books that I've like read growing up, it was very much like you kind of envision yourself as the character, or like you put yourself in the place of them, and it's like more of like an immersive experience, and this feels more of like an observational kind of like you're watching something happen rather than experiencing it yourself. It's a different experience definitely, and sometimes I feel like it is harder for me to read books like that because I really do enjoy like the immersive experience, but when it's like more tied to like reality, it's always interesting. Okay, next I read was The Ex-Hex. I read this October. I kind of like listened to it on audiobook, and I also did start the second book, but I DNF'd that because I just wasn't interested anymore and it was like past Halloween. This was a really good book. It is seasonal, so it's like very focused around Halloween time. There's magic and they're kind of like prepping for Halloween. I really enjoyed this book. It was so good to me. It was just like fun, silly, and like perfect for Halloween, like the cozy type of Halloween book. Really recommend it around Halloween time. And again, like I said, I love when my environment and my media kind of like comes together, so it was so good to read then. Okay, next we have Attached. This is The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love by Amira Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. This also changed my life. I annotated this book. This is one of those books that you do need your own copy of. There's like some like work page elements. You kind of like write things down or like check off boxes and little tests and things that you can write. I learned a lot, and this had been on my list for a while to read. Reading this honestly changed a lot of the way that I see relationships of all kinds. It's not just like romantic that it talks about. I definitely lean towards anxious attachment, but I also do feel like there was like a secure attachment version of me in the past, and I'm kind of like teetering in between. It explains what each attachment style is, how to figure out what attachment style. It gives you examples of like different relationships, like real relationships that they studied, and also just like how to live with your attachment style and like what to do and what to not do, or like what they recommend you do and what they don't. What is a good pairing for you? What should you maybe try and avoid, or like just be really careful around? I loved this, and I feel like if you are interested in this sort of subject, anything that's like related to like psychology or just like how the mind works, like I feel like this is a really good book to read. And I also want to read more psychology based books because I find that topic really interesting to me, and I just want to learn more about how our brain works because it's just so interesting, and I feel like there's a lot of answers within that. When I went home, I literally just sped through rereading the Clockwork Angel series by Cassandra Clare. I read that a long time ago and I just couldn't really remember a lot of it. And also last year I actually read the Chain of Thorns series. I forget what it's called. The one that's about their kids. This is the Infernal Devices series. There's a series that's about this generation's kids, and then this is like the parents. I loved this series so much. Like, it is so good. I will say like the first book is definitely my favorite. The series is so good, but it's just like there's so much sadness in this book and it is a lot of emotions. I like the series that was more recent and follows their kids because it has a little bit more of a lighter tone, except I feel like Cassandra Clare sometimes like really leans into the heaviness of like the fantasy genre, and I still love those books, like despite them being really a lot, but the characters in it too, and just like all of the friendships and the bonds between all of the characters are so special, and it's something unique that I haven't seen before, so really appreciate that too. A book that I am currently reading and do expect to finish by the end of the year is Rachel Cusk's Outline. Again, I feel like this really matches my wall back here, but I actually was supposed to potentially read this for a class like end of last year, but it became one of those like optional assignments because we were like so close to finals and I just didn't have the time to read it. So I really wanted to read it now because a lot of people actually liked the book and people talk about Rachel Cusk a lot. Again, Another area where I'm trying to like get more into, because what is this, like contemporary fiction, literary fiction, something, I don't know. Trying to get more into books like this. They don't suck me in. Like I don't feel like I have to like read through this book in a night, even though like I could probably read this in like a couple of hours. They're very much like books that like I take a lot of time to read. I am enjoying it so far. It's another like observational book. Like you meet a bunch of different characters that the author is like kind of meeting during her time in Greece. You're very much like seeing the world from her eyes type of thing. You're hearing about her through her reflection on the people around her. And I just like books like that because I feel like I'm very similar to that. Two more books that I wanted to talk about that I started reading and haven't yet finished, but I think I will finish them at some point. I just like, it's another one of those things that I just have to pick it up again. First, shocker, Sally Rooney, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I love normal people, which I feel like this is like a stereotype. I feel like there's a bunch of like contemporary novel, literary fiction people who like hate readers like me, but I don't care. I'm a reader too. I genuinely am just having a really hard time getting into this, and I think maybe I'll like listen to the audiobook or something. I just need that like something to get through it. I'm like stuck here, which is what, first 48 pages. Yeah, I just need to like really get into it, but I haven't. Final book, kind of a disappointment, is The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is part of the spin-off series of the Cruel Prince series, and this is the second book and the final book in the duology spin-off. And this follows Oak from the Cruel Prince series as he is an adult, or like older, I guess, just in general. Also a new character called Surin, I want to say is her name, and she's kind of like blue. She's blue and she's like kind of like feral. I think the first book was good. I read that in a single night of the duology. I love the Cruel Prince series, by the way, like one of my favorite series. I am 100 pages deep, and I tried so many times to restart this book and it just wasn't happening. So it's still there on my reading list, but it's like basically a DNF. My issue is like I don't DNF books because I just like always have hope that I will go back to them at some point, but some of them truly are DNFs. Like the Atlas 6 is a DNF for me. Like I can't get into it. I tried, but it's been on my currently reading for too long, so I need to remove it at some point. Oh, this is not happening. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at some of the books that I've read this past year. Definitely a wide array of different things, but if you would like to share some of your books that you've read in the comments, or just to talk about anything else, you can leave a comment. And I would also love if you could support this video in any way by liking it, sharing it, doing anything that you would like to show your support. And yeah, if you like any of my other content, you can check out the rest of my channel. Thank you guys so much for being here. Happy holidays, and I will see you very soon.